There's a feeling you know intimately, but rarely talk about. It comes late at night when you're alone with your thoughts. It shows up during moments that should feel fulfilling, but somehow don't. It's there in the morning when you wake up and have to convince yourself that today will be different, that today will finally mean something. It's emptiness, a hollow, aching sense that something essential is missing from your life. Not something you can point to or name easily. Not something you can fix by buying something or achieving something or finding someone. It's deeper than that. It's a void that nothing seems to fill, no matter how hard you try. And here's what makes it even more confusing. You might have everything you're supposed to want: the successful career, the relationship, the financial security, the social life. From the outside, your life might look perfectly fine, even enviable, but inside, there's this persistent emptiness that whispers, "Is this all there is? Is this what I worked so hard for? Why doesn't any of this actually satisfy me?" Carl Jung encountered this phenomenon constantly in his practice, and what he discovered should terrify and liberate you in equal measure. As Jung observed, about a third of my cases are suffering from no clinically definable neurosis, but from the senselessness and emptiness of their lives. This can be defined as the general neurosis of our time. Read that again. A third of his patients had nothing medically wrong with them. No chemical imbalance to correct, no traumatic event to process, no diagnosable disorder to treat. They were simply empty. And Jung recognized this wasn't a personal failing, it was a collective condition, a general neurosis affecting entire populations of people living in modern civilization. That was in Jung's time, the early to mid-1900s. Imagine what he would say about now, in an age where we're more connected than ever but feel more alone, where we have access to infinite entertainment but are constantly bored, where we can present perfect lives on social media while feeling hollow inside, where we chase achievement after achievement but never feel satisfied, where we accumulate possessions but feel impoverished, where we're busier than ever but feel like we're accomplishing nothing that truly matters. The emptiness you feel isn't a bug, it's a feature. It's not a sign that something's wrong with you, it's a sign that something's wrong with how you're living. And Jung discovered exactly what that something is. Modern life has disconnected you from your soul. Not your soul in some vague spiritual sense, but your psyche's deepest authentic core, what Jung called the self with a capital S. This self is the organizing principle of your being, the center of who you truly are beneath all the roles, masks, and conditioning. And modern civilization systematically teaches you to ignore it, suppress it, and live entirely from the ego, the superficial aspect of consciousness that's concerned with survival, status, and social acceptance. From the moment you're born, you're trained to look outside yourself for validation, direction, and meaning. You're taught that happiness comes from external achievements, that your worth depends on what you accomplish, what you acquire, who approves of you. You're conditioned to chase the prizes that society dangles: career success, financial wealth, romantic partnership, social status, material possessions. So you chase them. You work hard, you achieve, you acquire. And for a moment, each achievement feels good. Each acquisition provides a hit of satisfaction, but it never lasts. The emptiness returns, often stronger than before. So you chase the next thing, thinking, this will finally fill the void. But it doesn't. Nothing external ever does. This is what Jung meant by the senselessness and emptiness of their lives. You've been living according to scripts written by others, your family, your culture, your society, your time period. You've been pursuing goals that aren't actually yours. You've been trying to become who others need you to be instead of who you actually are. And your soul, your authentic self, is in rebellion. The emptiness you feel is yourself crying out for attention. It's your psyche saying, this isn't your life, These aren't your dreams. This isn't who you truly are. Stop living for external validation and start living from your inner truth. But most people never hear this message because they're too busy trying to fill the void with more external achievements. Jung also said, neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering. This statement is crucial for understanding your emptiness. You're experiencing what Jung called neurotic suffering, a vague, persistent malaise that has no clear source or solution. But underneath this neurotic suffering is legitimate suffering that you've been avoiding. The suffering of facing who you truly are, the pain of acknowledging how far you've strayed from your authentic path, the grief of recognizing all the years you've spent living someone else's life. The emptiness is actually protecting you from this legitimate suffering. As long as you feel vaguely empty but can't name why, you don't have to face the specific painful truths about your life. You don't have to admit that you hate your career. You don't have to acknowledge that your relationship is dead. You don't have to confront how disconnected you are from your genuine passions. You don't have to feel the grief of wasted years and unlived potential. But Jung discovered that this avoidance only makes things worse. The legitimate suffering you're avoiding by staying in neurotic emptiness is actually the doorway to meaning and fulfillment. When you have the courage to face the specific pain, I've been living the wrong life, I've betrayed my authentic self, I've sacrificed my truth for security and approval, you create the possibility for genuine change. This is why Jung emphasized that the solution to emptiness isn't more achievement, more distraction, or more positive thinking. The solution is what he called individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are by listening to your inner self rather than external voices. It's the journey from living on the surface of life to living from your depths, from performing an acceptable role to embodying your authentic nature. But individuation requires something that terrifies most people: solitude. Not just being alone, but genuine solitude. Time spent disconnected from all external stimulation and validation, sitting with yourself, listening to the inner voice you've been drowning out with busyness, achievement, and distraction. This is why people avoid solitude at all costs. They fill every moment with noise, scrolling, streaming, working, socializing, anything to avoid being alone with themselves. Because in genuine solitude, the emptiness becomes impossible to ignore. The questions you've been avoiding demand answers. The truth you've been hiding from emerges. The gap between who you are and who you're pretending to be becomes painfully obvious. But Jung discovered that on the other side of this uncomfortable solitude lies something precious: connection to your authentic self. In the silence, you begin to hear the quiet voice that's been trying to reach you. You start to sense what truly matters to you versus what you've been told should matter. You access desires, dreams, and directions that aren't borrowed from others, but arise from your own depths. This is also why Jung emphasized the importance of engaging with your dreams and your unconscious. The emptiness you feel during waking life is partly because you're only living half a life, the conscious, rational, socially acceptable half. You're ignoring the unconscious realm, where your deepest truths, your authentic desires, and your genuine self reside. Your dreams are trying to show you what your conscious mind is missing. Your symptoms, including the emptiness, are trying to guide you back to wholeness. Your strange attractions, your inexplicable resistances, your recurring patterns, all of this is communication from your unconscious self, trying to get your attention, trying to redirect you toward your authentic path. But modern life teaches you to ignore all of this, to override your inner signals in favor of external demands, to suppress your dreams in favor of practical goals, to distrust your intuition in favor of rational calculation, to abandon your authentic desires in favor of acceptable ambitions. And the result is the epidemic of emptiness that Jung identified and that has only intensified in the decades since his death. Here's another uncomfortable truth Jung discovered. For many people, the emptiness only becomes unbearable in midlife. You can distract yourself with achievement and accumulation in your 20s and 30s, but somewhere around 40, the question becomes unavoidable. I've achieved what I was supposed to achieve, so why am I still empty? The midlife crisis isn't about buying a sports car or having an affair. It's the psyche's desperate attempt to break free from the inauthentic life and finally live truthfully. But you don't have to wait for midlife crisis to address the emptiness. You can start now. You can stop right now and ask yourself the questions Jung would ask. What am I avoiding by staying busy? What truth about my life am I refusing to face? Whose dreams am I living? What would my authentic self want if it could speak freely? What am I actually hungry for beneath all the surface cravings? These questions are uncomfortable because they threaten your entire current life structure. They might reveal that you've been on the wrong path for years. They might show you that the life you've built, while impressive to others, isn't actually yours. They might demand changes that feel impossible or terrifying. This is why most people stay in the emptiness rather than facing these questions. But Jung believed that facing these questions, however painful, is the only path to genuine fulfillment. As he said, man cannot stand a meaningless life. You're not designed to live on the surface, chasing external validation, performing for others. You're designed to live from your depths, expressing your authentic nature, following your genuine calling. When you're disconnected from this depth, emptiness is the inevitable result. The emptiness isn't your enemy, it's your ally. It's your psyche's way of saying, pay attention, something crucial is missing. You're off course, come back to yourself. Most people treat emptiness as a problem to solve, a feeling to fix, a void to fill with more external stuff. But Jung would say the emptiness is the solution, not the problem. It's the wake-up call you need to stop living someone else's life and start living your own. This doesn't mean you need to blow up your entire life or make dramatic changes immediately. It means you need to start the gradual process of reconnecting with your authentic self. Spend time in genuine solitude. Pay attention to your dreams. Notice what truly energizes versus depletes you. Identify where you're performing versus being real. Recognize whose voice is in your head telling you what you should do or be. Start making small choices based on your inner truth rather than external expectations. Stop doing things only because you think you're supposed to. Start honoring your genuine desires, even when they don't make sense to others. Create space for activities that feed your soul, even if they don't advance your career or impress your peers. These small acts of authenticity begin to fill the emptiness in a way that external achievements never could. Jung also emphasized that this work often requires facing what he called the dark night of the soul, a period of disorientation and grief as you recognize how far you've strayed from your authentic path and begin the difficult work of returning to it. This isn't comfortable. You might have to admit painful truths. You might have to make difficult changes. You might have to disappoint people who were invested in your false self. But on the other side of this dark night lies what Jung called rebirth. The emergence of your authentic self, no longer suppressed or distorted by external demands. This is when life finally feels real, when your days have genuine meaning, when what you do actually matters to you rather than just looking good to others. This is when the emptiness finally truly fills, not with external stuff, but with internal substance, with the felt sense of living your own life. Jung also recognized that this journey of reconnecting with your authentic self is not solitary in the way you might think. Yes, it requires solitude and inner work, but he also understood that we need what he called genuine relationships to support this transformation. Relationships based on mutual authenticity rather than mutual performance. When you're surrounded by people who only know your false self, who are invested in you staying the same, it becomes nearly impossible to transform. This is why your emptiness might intensify when you're around certain people or in certain environments. Your soul knows it can't breathe there. Your authentic self recognizes that these spaces require you to perform, to suppress, to be less than whole. The emptiness is your psyche's way of saying, this environment is toxic to your authentic being. These relationships are based on who you're pretending to be, not who you actually are. Many people discover that as they begin to reconnect with their authentic self, their social circle changes dramatically. Some relationships naturally fall away because they were built on your false persona. Others deepen because they can finally be based on genuine connection. And new relationships appear. People who resonate with your emerging authenticity, who are also on their own journey of individuation. This social dimension of emptiness is rarely discussed, but it's crucial. You might have a thriving social life and still feel profoundly lonely because none of those connections touch your authentic self. You're surrounded by people who know your mask, your role, your performance, but not your soul. This creates a unique kind of emptiness, the loneliness of being visible but unseen, known but unknown, connected but isolated. Jung believed that one genuine relationship based on mutual authenticity is worth 1,000 superficial connections based on personas and performances. When two people meet soul to soul, self to self, without the masks and roles, that's when the emptiness begins to dissolve in relationship. Not because the other person fills your void, but because authentic connection reminds you that you're not alone in being human, flawed, searching, and struggling to live truthfully in a world that rewards pretense. There's also a dimension of this emptiness that Jung connected to what he called loss of soul, a concept found in shamanic traditions that he believed had psychological validity. In these traditions, parts of the soul can become lost or fragmented due to trauma, suppression, or abandonment. From a Jungian perspective, this happens when you disown aspects of yourself to survive or gain acceptance. Every time you suppress your authentic anger to keep the peace, a piece of your soul goes into exile. Every time you hide your genuine desires to avoid judgment, you fracture your wholeness. Every time you perform who you think you should be instead of being who you are, you lose connection to your core self. Over time, these accumulated losses create the profound emptiness you feel, not just disconnection, but actual fragmentation. The work of filling this emptiness, then, isn't just about reconnecting with yourself. It's about soul retrieval, about bringing back the exiled parts, about reintegrating what was split off. This is deep, often painful work because it requires going back to the moments when you chose survival over authenticity, when you fractured yourself to fit in, when you abandoned parts of yourself that others couldn't accept. But Jung also held a beautiful truth. The psyche has an inherent drive toward wholeness. Just as your body naturally heals wounds, your psyche naturally seeks integration and completeness. The emptiness you feel is actually this drive expressing itself. Your psyche's insistent call for the return of what was lost, for the healing of what was fragmented, for the integration of what was split. This means that the emptiness, uncomfortable as it is actually a sign of health. It means your psyche hasn't given up on you. It means your authentic self is still alive, still calling out, still demanding to be lived. The alternative, feeling nothing at all, complete disconnection from your depths, total identification with the false self, would actually be worse. The emptiness is painful, but it's proof that you're still capable of becoming whole. If you've been feeling that hollow emptiness, if nothing external seems to satisfy despite all your achievements, if you're starting to suspect that you've been living the wrong life, if you recognize that you've lost parts of yourself along the way, then you're ready for the journey Jung described. Write in the comments, "I choose authentic meaning over empty achievement and commit to the uncomfortable work of reconnecting with your soul." Share this with someone who seems successful but feels empty inside. Your authentic life is waiting. Will you finally stop running from it?